I'm Savannah.
And I'm Elysia.
And this is Burden of Proof.
Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome.
We have a very special episode today.
We are so excited to be talking with some of our besties over at Buried Motives. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Christie.
And I'm Melissa.
We are so obsessed with Buried Motives. I first found you guys after listening to your case on Adam Strong, which I then came over and covered on our show. So that was a long time ago, and we're really excited to have you guys on.
Well, we're excited to be here and excited to share a case with you today.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Buried Motives?
Well, I think we're very similar to the two of you. We're just a couple of really great friends who love to discuss true crime.
So we are so excited because today, Buried Motives is going to be telling our listeners, you guys, a case that they've covered.
Yeah. And I've listened to this case, and it's excellent.
I have not listened to the case so that we could have differing, so that I can have a surprised reaction, and Elysia has already prepared not prepared reactions, but has processed the case and knows what is happening. I have no idea.
Yeah, I was too nosy. I wanted to know what was happening.
I love surprises. Elysia does not.
Sounds like a very similar dynamic between Melissa and I as well. I didn't look into the case that you'll eventually tell us either.
Right. So I'll let you guys take it away.
Yeah.
Well, I am excited to get your guys' perspective on this case. Every so often on Buried Motives, we'll throw in a case that's not so cut and dry. Usually we just talk about those dirtbags that we know absolutely are dirtbags. But today I wanted to share a case with you guys where the dirtbag hasn't fully confessed.
Interesting.
Okay.
This case has always been one that has me sitting on the fence.
We covered this in our first few cases. I think it was case number 5, and Melissa is still unsure. And for good reason.
Okay. I can't wait to hear it again because it's been a while since I listened. And I do remember having very conflicting feelings on it as well. So maybe when I hear it again this time, I'll come up with something more definitive.
It's hard for me to find cases that have me on the fence because I'm a very black and white person. So I'm curious to see if you can stump me.
All right. Well, then that makes me even more excited to tell you this case. On the surface, this is a classic fatal attraction case where your scorned ex-lover takes out their jealousy and hurt on the new love interest. This case is full of drama, from the contention between the victim's family and the police to the mad search for alibis and all sorts of he said, she said. But it is a case that's largely circumstantial, and the murderer still maintains her innocence, even though a jury had no doubts, returning a verdict in just hours after a month-long trial and almost 100 witnesses sharing their testimonies.
Holy crap.
Yeah.
100 is a lot.
It is so many. Because she maintains her innocence, though, there's no confession that lets us know exactly what happened. And I personally like a confession. I'm a fence sitter, and so once they give me their confession, I know, okay, you did it. But instead, with this case today, we get to follow the evidence the police presented, just like the jury did. And we get to mull over if Patricia Rorrer is a dirtbag murderer or if she was wrongly convicted.
Okay.
All right. I can't wait.
Let's get into it.
So 24-year-old Joann O'Connor met 38-year-old Andrew Katrinak at a club in the spring of 1992. And it was love at first sight for both of them. Joanne Marie was born on October 11th, 1968, and she was the youngest of 4 children for her mother Sarah, who went by Sally, and David O'Connor. She was a beautiful girl. She had an Irish-Italian background, she had dark hair, olive skin, and she was known for being perfectly groomed. Her mother described her as fun, likable, beautiful, always happy. Joanne had aspirations to work in the fashion industry, and she always was well put together. After a foray into marriage the first time that failed in less than a year, she was on the rebound and looking for a new guy. And in walks Andrew Katrinak. He was born September 20th, 1954, to Veronica and Andrew Sr. Andrew was formerly a pro boxer in Las Vegas. He was 6'2", he had blonde hair, and at the time that they met, he worked and owned a construction company. He wasn't the greatest with money, and in fact, at this time, his house was owned by his parents, and his phone remained in his ex-girlfriend's name, but Joann still felt like he was a catch. They started a relationship together pretty quickly, and it wasn't long after they met that Joann moved in to 740 Front Street, Catasauqua, Pennsylvania. The two married on May 29th, 1993, and on August 21st, 1994, Alex Martin Katrinak was born, a very large, healthy baby boy with almond-shaped blue eyes. He became the center of attention for their whole family. And as grandmas do, she would proudly report to anybody who would listen that he was a very advanced baby for his age.
All grandmas say that, I think.
Yeah.
They do. I can confer.
I don't know what you're talking about. My grandmother would never lie, and I was a very advanced baby.
It's true then.
It's very true, obviously.
Yes. It's just what grandmas do. But overall, things seem to be going really well for this young couple. That was until December 12th, 1994, when Joann answered the phone and Patricia Rorrer, known as Patty, was on the other end. Patty and Andrew had previously dated on and off from 1986 to 1991. And Patty had even stayed with them for a short time following a breakup with her abusive boyfriend, leaning on Andy for emotional support. Andy and Patty, after their breakup, had maintained a friendly relationship. The breakup had been mutual, and they spoke on the phone occasionally. According to Andy, things had cooled a little bit by the time Alex was born. But during this particular phone call, Patty asked to speak to Andy, and Joann refused her. It wasn't the first time Patty had called, and it sounded like she was getting a little bit fed up with his ex calling him. She ends up telling her to leave Andy alone, that he's happily married and has a baby. During this call, Andy's home and he overhears it all, but he doesn't intervene, even when things got a little heated between the two women. Joann would later discuss this call with her family and friends the next day. It was the whole crazy ex-lover conversation.
I mean, I would absolutely not be okay if my fiance's ex or my husband's ex was calling the house constantly asking to talk to him.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially after just giving birth to a baby only a few months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not to get too personal, but in a way that happened to me. I had just given birth to twins, and my husband got a Facebook message from his high school girlfriend.
Oh, no kidding. That's terrible.
But yeah, I can't believe that Patty would continue to call, like, once he's married with a kid. That's crazy.
She was definitely crossing a boundary.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little bit of a bizarre situation. And so 3 days later, on December 15th, 1994, Joann talks on the phone with her mother-in-law, Veronica, around 1:30 p.m. and invites her to go out Christmas shopping, telling her that she'll drop by and pick her up. But then she never does. Joann fails to pick up her mother-in-law at the appointed time. Her mother-in-law, Veronica, waits around until about 3:30 when her husband returns from work. And by that time, she figures that Joann must have just forgot about her or changed her mind about the shopping trip. But all of a sudden, she's just not there. It was reported that their relationship was a little tense at this time. And so I thought maybe this was a plausible reason why the mother-in-law didn't dig any further into her not showing up or even mentioning it to her son until he calls.
Okay.
That's pretty weird.
It is a little bit weird. But I think the relationship between Joann and Veronica may have been a plausible explanation of why she didn't immediately freak out about it.
Okay.
I mean, okay. I guess I'll allow it.
Awesome. So Andy arrives home around 6 p.m. He's a little bit perplexed, but not really too worried about Joann and Alex not being home. He notices that chicken has been pulled out for dinner, and so he figures their shopping trips just run a little bit long, and he settles down to watch some TV. At 7:30, he calls Joann's sister Peggy to see if she has seen her. And then by 8 p.m., he calls his parents home to see where Joann is. And that's when he's told that she never showed up. Now he starts to get a little nervous. He calls local hospitals to see about admissions, and he calls the local police to see if there were any accidents reported. Andy's parents come over to help him look for Joann, and it sounds like this is when he noticed that the back door to their basement was ajar, and the hinges look like they've been tampered with. The timeline about when he found this door is a little bit vague, but he said he was downstairs checking the oil tank, and that's when he realized that this basement door that they rarely used was a little bit ajar.
So it was a walkout basement.
Yeah, it's walkout. It goes straight out to the outside, back to where they park their car.
I've never had a basement, so I believe you. That I have a bunch of Canadian friends who live in basements, so I guess I technically have seen it. I just always forget that that's what they are.
Yep.
Because they look so nice.
Yeah.
And sometimes if you're really lucky, it's actually a walkout and it's dug down enough that you can walk right out of your house from your basement.
It is. Okay. I have an image.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So when he finds this door a little bit ajar and the hinges look like they've been played with a little bit, he really starts to get worried. Andy calls the police at 10:42 p.m. Officers come and take a look around, staying for about 18 minutes. They check the house, but they really don't see anything that sets off any radar for them or any alarm bells for them. They determine that there's no signs of criminal activity, and they figure that Joann and the baby have just gone off and they just haven't returned home. The police report that was filed from this time does not mention the basement door being ajar, but Andy is adamant that he mentioned it to the police during this initial call to the house.
Interesting.
18 minutes doesn't seem like a very long time
No.
for them to get information and to look around, like to talk and to look.
No, it's not a long time at all. They barely spent any time there.
That's barely enough time to take your shoes on and off in Canada, because we do that too when you come in the house.
Right.
Mind you, this isn't in Canada, I guess.
But it's in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I was going to say,
north.
still Pennsylvania. You know, I'm originally from Ohio, so during the snowy months, yeah, you'd still need more time to look around and take your boots off and whatnot.
What I think it speaks to is that they weren't overly concerned at all.
Which on one hand we see a lot in like missing persons cases, because she hasn't been missing for very long and she's an adult. So they think that like technically it's not something they have to take seriously yet. But a lot of times we wish that they would.
Right.
It also makes me think that maybe Andy didn't mention this door before now.
Right.
He says he did, but it wasn't in the police report.
Right. I mean, even if they were rushing, I have a hard time believing that they would have just not looked at the door if he had said something.
And it seems like it would be one of the main things they would put in their police report.
Definitely, because it would be suspicious.
Exactly.
So Joann's parents and sister arrive to help look for Joann. They're concerned too. And shortly before 3 a.m., as they're all touring around the neighborhood, Joann's tan Toyota is found in the parking lot of the McCarty's bar, which is actually right next to the couple's house. So the couple's back alley goes out, and then there's the bar, and then there's the bar's parking lot on the opposite side. So you can't necessarily see the parking lot from the back of their house, but it is just around the corner. At this time, the police are called at 2:45 a.m. to tell them that the car has been found. The police come and they do another preliminary search. They find that the engine of the car is cold and that the car has frost on it. It is locked and the keys are inside. Now, there was some discrepancy between the position of the driver's seat, whether it was in a forward position or a fully pushed back position. But it is noted that it's not in Joann's customary position.
That's a very important detail. You said that they weren't 100% sure as to where it was left. It wasn't documented. They just knew that it wasn't in her position.
That's right. There's some discrepancy in the documentation. The family says that it was in a fully pushed back position, and the police's records have it in a fully pushed forward position.
But they just know it was not in Joann's regular position.
Right. Okay.
So the car also has no dirt or mud on the tires, but there is a can of mace on the floor. This can of mace is the one that Joann usually kept stored in the glove box.
Which means she was likely grabbing for it.
The most disturbing part of finding the car for the family had been that it was backed into the parking spot. Joann was notoriously bad at backing up and would avoid it at all costs. So there's no way that she backed her car into a parking spot.
See, that's how you would know I was kidnapped because I cannot. I mean, I'm getting better because my fiance is really big into backing in. He always makes me. But that's for sure. If you find my car backed into a space and I'm missing, I did not park that car.
Yeah.
Me too, Savannah. I'm learning you and I are the same person.
It really is becoming clear.
When we recorded this the first time, I talked about how I backed out of Melissa's place one time and ran over one of her baby trees she had just planted. And I even have a backup camera, and I still hit it.
Oh my gosh.
There's just some of those nuances that you know a person would not do or they would do. They have a particular way of doing things. And so this really set off the alarm bells for her family. Police at this time don't collect anything, and they tell Andy that he can take the car home. He actually refuses to because he's fearful that it will disturb any potential evidence.
Good job.
Yeah.
So shortly after finding the car, Andy places a call to Patty's mother to see if Patty is at home. He explains that he didn't have Patty's number because she's always the one calling him. But his father was able to find Patty's mother's number, and so he gives her a call. He tells her that he doesn't want Patty calling him, but asks her mother to call and check and see if Patty is at home. This is all at like 3 a.m. in the morning. But Patty's mother does call and check to see if Patty's home, and then calls Andy back and tells him that Patty is at home in bed.
When I heard this the first time, it floored me. I was thinking, who the heck is going to call his ex-lover at 3 o'clock in the morning to see if she's home when his wife and little baby boy is missing?
My first thought is he thinks that she had something to do with it.
Yeah, possibly. But at the same time, if she's only called to talk to him and she's never made threats or done anything too outlandish, why would his brain go to, now seems like a good time to call up that ex-girlfriend?
My thinking is that he thought, okay, they just had a fight. Something happened to my wife. Maybe if I call Patty and she's not home, then she's out with my wife and baby.
Could be.
That is Andy's explanation later on, is that they had just had this fight on the phone. And so that's where his mind went. He was worried that something happened between Patty and Joann. The phone call between Patty's mother and Andy does show up on phone records. But the call between Patty and her mother is a local one. And so at the time, there's no record of that call. It can't be traced.
Because it was the 90s and they only traced long distance.
Right.
So we can't actually prove that her mom talked to her and she was actually in bed.
Correct.
Okay.
At the end of the day, it's just a really weird scenario. For the whole situation is odd. To me, anyway.
I agree.
I think it makes perfect sense, honestly. I'm with him. He's trying to figure out who would do it.
I don't know if I would call her myself at 3 a.m. or her mother, or if I would say to the police, this is who you need to check. Call the police in her area, see if she's home. Have that proof that she's at her house.
Right.
They're still friendly, though. Wouldn't you call up a friend and be like, hey, what's going on?
Not if I thought she killed my wife.
No, me either.
I would definitely call the police and have them do it, but I understand where his brain was if that is actually what he was doing.
Right.
It is interesting. So everyone eventually goes home, and Andy just kind of wanders around his house. He doesn't go back to bed. Early in the morning, Andy finds a cut phone line when he tries to make a call from the cordless phone in their bedroom. The family have 2 phone lines. One is in the bedroom, it's for the cordless phone, and one is in the kitchen for the one that hangs on the wall. He calls the police again at 5 a.m. to report this cut phone line. He's on the ball. He wants them to know about it right away. The phone wire that was cut is the one to the cordless phone in the bedroom, and it's the phone that Joann uses most often. That line for that phone was located at the opposite end of the basement, which was dark and not easily accessible or in plain sight. The main line that went to the kitchen, which wasn't cut, was in clear view of that basement door that he had previously said was ajar. Police investigate again, but don't spend much time following up on this concern.
So essentially what I'm thinking that means is that whoever cut the phone line knew that that was the phone line to the bedroom?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm thinking anyway.
They would have had to have been familiar with the layout of the home and where that phone was plugged in.
Yes.
Right.
You guys are on the right track. By 10 a.m. on the morning of the 16th, Andy's repeated calls are now getting some interest from the Catasauqua Police Department. And they come over to the house. They send Detective Grube over to the house to oversee a more thorough investigation. They find that Andy has fixed the phone line that he had previously reported being cut to the police. Andy claims that the other officers told him that he could fix it. In the house, they find things generally in order. Suitcases and clothing are not missing. Only Alex's diaper bag is, and Joann's purse is gone as well, which is on par for them going out shopping for the day. Police collect minimal amounts of things from the house. There's some bathroom trash, including some recently used tampons that they collect. And then when they go downstairs, they do look at this basement door that Andy's been telling them has been disturbed. Now it has very obvious signs of tampering. The first call reported that it was only a disturbed hinge, and now there's screws that have been removed from the boarded window beside the door, and the hinge has been pried at and screws are removed. So there's more damage done to this door.
We think there's more because they never looked at it in the first place to confirm what was actually there.
Well, right. So during the trial, the police do testify that, yes, there was some damage originally when they looked during that 18-minute call. But now they're saying that there's more than what we saw originally, and we had just left it out of our report.
Okay.
Yeah. On December 18th, so 2 days later, Pennsylvania State Police were called in to the investigation because there's some animosity going on between Andy and the local police. The first break in the case comes on December 19th, when police start to process Joann's car. Although there's really not a lot to work with. Police find no fingerprints at all, indicating that it's been wiped down. They find no traces of blood and very little dirt on the undercarriage of the car. They do find 6 strands of hair stained with what is assumed to be dried blood on the back of the driver's seat headrest. Later analysis would reveal that this blood was either Joann's or Alex's. Initial examination of the hairs would show that they were not consistent with Joann's, Alex's, or Andy's hair. They appeared to be dark at the roots and then blonde at the ends, and they were approximately 8 inches long. So even though Andy does have blonde hair, he wasn't rocking a super long do.
And Joann was brunette.
Yeah, my guess is Andy also wasn't getting highlights at the salon.
Well, it was the 90s. You never know. Those little frosting
tips were in.
Got the frosted tips going on.
Frosted tips were totally a look. Just not 8 inches of it.
True.
I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Hey, Justin Timberlake wishes he could.
Yeah. At this point in the investigation, police become really skeptical of Andy's explanation on how the intruder got into the house, and he becomes the prime suspect. There are just a whole bunch of little things that are setting alarm bells off for them. Each time the police return to the house, they say that there was more and more damage done to the basement door. Police investigate the house and find that Andy has fixed the phone line. It's noted that Andy didn't seem particularly frantic while authorities searched desperately for his wife and son. And in TV clips, he doesn't come off as being overly disturbed by it. He actually comes off as being very well put together. Close family and friends don't think that Andy has anything to do with the disappearances, and they described the couple as happily married. Although there were the occasional reports from friends and third parties that everything wasn't so peachy in the Katrinak home, but most of the gossip surrounding it wasn't like crazy stuff was happening between the two of them. It seemed like normal marriage stuff. But one of the most interesting discrepancies came from Andy himself. In 2 different police reports, he tells police that he left for work while Joann was still in bed. And in a 3rd report, he tells police what his wife was wearing for the day.
Huh.
Andy.
You know, I was on Andy's side there for a minute, and now I'm starting to have questions.
He's looking a little suspicious, that's for sure.
I just don't understand why there was more damage to the door. Like,
Yeah.
it's your house. You don't need to break in, so there shouldn't be any more damage.
Definitely.
I think he's trying to sell an idea to the police.
And because the police aren't that frantic, it's believed that he was tampering with it to make it look worse so that they would become more frantic. Even though he's acting all cool in the media.
Right. When you said it the first time that there was more damage, the second time that they looked at the door, I was like, okay, he said they weren't taking him seriously. He wanted them to take it. Okay, fine. Don't do that, but it makes sense. But now that there's more and more every time they go, that's weird.
Agreed. Andy, what are you doing? You're making yourself look bad.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, is if it was just that he was, you know, cool and calm during interviews and stuff, that happens often with husbands. We've covered cases where the husband was completely innocent and it's just his personality type, and so that does happen. But all of these weird little things are not looking so good for Andy.
I agree. And I think, too, you're almost impeding the investigation by giving them false evidence. So that's not helping them find your wife.
Wait. I have to say, we're on with buried motives. At some point, I have to call him a dirtbag.
Yes, you do.
He's acting like a dirtbag. A little bit.
He most definitely is.
I agree.
Exactly. But so Andy doesn't appear so much like a dirtbag. He does agree to take 2 polygraph tests. He passes each of them, but does show deception on each of the tests he takes. On December 19th at 2 p.m., Andy agrees to take a polygraph test where one of the questions he answers shows deception. It was on question 3, which read, "Are you attempting to withhold any information concerning your wife and child?" He claims that this showed deception because at the time he was asked the question, he thought about hiding the vibrator from the police when they showed up to investigate the house. When he explains this to the police, they're like, oh, okay, well, now you have to take another polygraph test, which he agrees to. And he takes that test later in February, and it again shows deception on a similar question. This time it was question 8 that asked, did you make up any part of the disappearance of your wife and son? This time, when he's asked to explain why he's showing deception on this question, he admits that he was looking for the wallet in the car and playing detective.
Okay. Both of those seem like plausible reasons to have deception on a polygraph test.
Yeah, I think that's what we figured the first time too.
Because,
it's just measuring your reaction to the question, right? And if he is thinking about a vibrator, or if he was thinking, oh, I did play detective, but I don't really want to fess up to it, it's going to show up.
And we know that polygraphs are not a great science either.
Right.
So despite all this interfering with the evidence and storytelling to get the police to pay attention, Andy actually has a pretty solid alibi. It's corroborated by his father. He was working on an addition for friends, and all of them say he didn't leave work that day. He arrived that morning at the regular time. He worked with his dad until about 3 when he left. And then Andy is reported to still be at the home when the family's children returned from school at approximately 3:30, and was still there when the friend returned from work at 5. And the two of them actually worked alongside each other until about 6 p.m. when he left for home.
Okay. Well, that's promising compared to what Andy's been looking like.
Are you back on Team Andy?
I am back on Team Andy at this point.
I don't know if I'm Team Andy exactly.
I'm still not sure about Andy.
I need another subject. I need another suspect. I feel like we're focusing too much. Not you, but like the investigation.
Well, yeah, but I mean, that's what they do.
I know. I'm disagreeing with the fundamentals.
Yeah, I don't know that Andy is a killer, but I definitely don't have an appreciation for Andy's behavior.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Okay. I'm withholding judgment.
Okay, so Andy was the police's prime suspect, and they did focus in on him a lot. But they were actually having a hard time coming up with a motive for Andy to kill his wife and his child. Joann had minimal life insurance, and while Andy was really horrible at money management, it didn't seem to be any worse than any other point in his life. So they weren't coming up with any real motive. Throughout the beginning of the investigation, the Katrinak family and the police investigating the case seemed to be at complete odds. Andy actually contracts a private investigator to find his family because he feels the police aren't doing their job. This doesn't impress the police, who believe that he keeps getting in the way of their investigation and hampering it. Andy tries to help the investigation along by giving police his ideas on who could be involved with the disappearances. The names at the top of his list are Joann's ex-husband, whose alibi is considered, again, really solid. He too was at work several hours away. And his other name is Patricia Rorrer, his ex-girlfriend.
Dun, dun, dun.
Just as Andy, though, is pointing the finger at Patty, on December 22nd, Patty's mom calls Andy's house, and one of the police officers is actually there doing an investigation. He picks up the phone, and she tells him all about her suspicions that Andy can't father children. And that's why she thinks he's really the suspect. Police are ready to jump on any lead that points to Andy at this point in the investigation. And so they actually arrange for the FBI in North Carolina to go over and question Patty Rorrer and her mother that very day. I'm sure the police are thinking like, yes, they have found their motive finally. During the interview at Patty's house, Patty is a brunette. She does not appear to have any injuries and is helpful to the investigators. She answers questions and confirms her mother's suspicions about Andy's ability to father children. She says she's so sure that he can't because she didn't use birth control the whole time they were together and she never got pregnant.
So when it comes to getting pregnant, does Patty have any children? Like, she
has had children before this, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so it's not just him. I mean, it takes two to tango. Like, it could be on either side.
Yeah.
Or they could have just been very lucky.
Right.
I think they were very lucky.
Yeah, because police actually go on to ask Andy to provide a semen sample to confirm that he can father children as a way of proving or disproving this possible motive.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. That's the most insane thing I've ever heard in my life. Can you imagine them being like, okay, here's a magazine. You're at a police station.
Here's a cup.
Go make your deposit.
Your wife and child are missing, but we need some of your little sperm guys to test.
Right.
But that's how focused they were on Andy. They were willing to take it to this extreme. They were grasping at straws. During this same interview, Patty is asked about her alibi, and she tells the police she got grain for her horses and went to the gas station to look for some keys that she had thought she had lost there. But the interview at this time is mostly on Andy and his character, what she thinks of him. After Andy's deposit to the police, and he proves that he actually can father children, the trail on this case seems to go cold. On December 22nd, reports to the media are made asking people to come forward with information. Any information would be of use. Eyewitnesses start to come forward. Someone says that they've seen Joann and baby Alex at a convenience store on the 20th buying large amounts of supplies. Another person, an older man, comes forward and says that he saw Joann arguing with Andy, who was disguised in a wig and a beard, arguing about the baby. Joann was at that time walking along the railroad track at 4 p.m. on December 15th. Another person says Joann was at the airport. A neighbor said they heard 4 gunshots in the area during the early morning hours of December 15th. And then 2 workers from the casket company that is beside the McCarty bar where the car was found, both say that the car was not there when they arrived for their shift, but then it was there when they left to go home at 3:10 and 3:40 p.m. Police investigate all of these possible leads, but they rule out the validity of almost all of the claims.
That's the problem when you ask the public for help sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes having too much information is not always helpful.
Right. There's just too many directions to look into.
Right.
There was, though, from all of these tips that they were getting, this belief starting that maybe Joann did run off. But family and friends said that it was very unlikely because she was extremely happy. And then police eventually dropped that avenue as well because no activity shows up on her bank account or credit cards. After 4 months of searching, it starts to feel like the mother and child have just disappeared into thin air. Then, on April 9th, 1995, a farmer in Heidelberg Township, 15 miles from Joann's home, is trying to get an early jump on his fieldwork when he comes across what he thinks is garbage in a wooded area adjacent to one of his fields. He finds a woman's body with an infant laying face down on the woman's stomach. It's later confirmed to be Joann and baby Alex, with his favorite toy rattle laying nearby.
I was really hoping they were just missing.
Right?
Not so much. That's so sad. I can't. Can you imagine being the farmer that found them?
It's another reason not to be a farmer.
Yeah,
that's right.
Farmers are good.
No, I love farmers. That they're the backbone of America. They're the backbone of every country. But good for them.
It wouldn't have been a pleasant sight to come across. That's for sure.
I think I've heard in one of your other episodes you talking about why you wouldn't want to be a farmer.
I don't do livestock. I don't do. I mean, I'm fine with getting up early, but. You know, that's real early. I don't do roosters and chickens.
Yeah, you should have seen the look on her face because and I thought about getting chickens and the look on her face was like, I'm never coming over again if you get chickens.
I would come over, but if you made me touch one, we would have a problem.
Savannah, wasn't it? I think it was you that had the problem with the word milking. Is that?
Yeah, I do. I don't like, what episode was that? But yeah, it was definitely me.
It's all good. We have chickens. Anyway. All right. Well, this next part you can either skip over or you can cut out or do what you like. But I'm going to tell you some details about what this farmer found.
Okay.
So Joann was under a thin layer of leaves, face up with knees bent. She had been shot in the face and beaten around her head. 15-week-old Alex was skin to skin on her stomach, with arms outstretched across her and his legs dangling off his mother's abdomen. His head had left an indent in her stomach, and his face was buried so tightly against her skin that his facial features had actually been preserved. There was evidence of animal activity on both of the bodies and obvious exposure to the elements. The areas that the bodies were found in was 200 feet from the intersection in a densely wooded area, about 250 feet wide, and the area was remote and was only accessible by a small logging trail or a railroad bed. After 15 hours of scene investigation, no fingerprints or footprints were found, but there are several hairs on the diaper bag, similar to the ones found in the car. And there's one dark hair that is actually found in Joann's hand, along with 3 fragments of fingernails along with the body, and a cigarette butt found underneath the body. On April 10th, an autopsy of the body shows that Joann was shot in the face with a .22 caliber and then bludgeoned in the head 19 times with a blunt force object. The coroner would later testify that Joann, 26 at the time of her death, had 7 wounds to the top of her head, 2 to the left side, 5 to the right, and 5 on the back of her head. She had been shot through the right cheek as well. Her nose had been fractured, and she had bruises on her right shin. Her left middle finger had multiple breaks, which he attributed to defensive wounds. All injuries occurred while she was still alive because there was still active bleeding at all of them. And it couldn't be determined if the blows or the shooting had happened first. There was a copper-coated bullet and 2 lead fragments that were removed from Joann's face. There were no signs of sexual assault, and a tampon was found inside the vaginal cavity. Her pants were found a little ways down on her waist, but they thought that this was because she had been dragged. The baby's autopsy was inconclusive. Alex was said to have died either from suffocation or exposure.
That's horrible.
Horrific. I can't process. I will say I used to could handle children's deaths like better than I do now, because I wasn't around kids a whole lot until my friends started having kids, and now that I'm basically an aunt, like it just is so much harder.
It is truly awful.
That level of beating and then shooting, or vice versa, whatever, that's personal. I don't think a stranger would do that. To what end? And then when you confirm that there was no sexual assault evidence and whatnot, it kind of makes you think she must have known the person that did that.
I agree. It seems very rageful.
Yes.
That was Christie's first conclusion when she first heard this case too, was, oh my goodness, that is a lot of hate. Alex's diaper bag was still fully packed with clean diapers, and there were no dirty diapers in the collection container that Joann carried with her. And there was an unopened can of formula in the bag. The diaper bag had hair on it, which was again consistent with the hair that was found in the car. Time of death was difficult to establish because of the exposure to the cold temperatures and the length of time between the disappearance and the bodies being found. There was one entomologist that testified at trial that could only suggest that bug activity probably started in February, but he couldn't really say if it was because it was too cold for bug activity prior to that, or if their bodies just weren't in the woods at that time. It is generally believed that the two were killed very soon after the abduction because of the tampon found inside of the vaginal canal. It corresponded to the used tampons that the police had found at the home at the time of the disappearance. And they also used the packed diaper bag because nothing was used in it.
Which would be unusual unless you had just barely left the home.
Right.
Especially with a little baby.
Mm-hmm.
A funeral was held that April in 1995 for Joann and Alex. They were buried in a single bronze casket at the Bethlehem Church. Police now have more evidence to kind of work on and build their theories as to what's happened to this mother and child. A profiler suggests that the perpetrator must have been a male because of the violence of the crime and the need for physical strength to overpower Joann. Even though she was a little bit shorter, she was fairly athletic. One of the investigators on the case, he actually recalls a previous case that he worked on, and he theorizes that the gun might have jammed after that first shot, and that's what necessitated this beating to take place. And maybe that's why there was so much rage after the shot took place. Police take Andrew out to the crime scene to see his reaction because honestly, at this point, they're still thinking he has something to do with it. So they want to gauge his reaction, if he's going to look in the direction of where the bodies were found before they pointed out or things like that. He really doesn't remember anything about the area until they're all leaving it. And then he tells police that his ex-girlfriend, Patty, used to ride her horse in the area. And for a period of time, she worked at the farm just down the road where she rented a stable for her horses. This is the third time now that Patty has been brought up by Andy, and police actually start to take him seriously. So who is Patty? Patricia Lynn Rorrer was born on January 24th, 1964 in eastern Pennsylvania, raised by Pat and Bob Rorrer. At 15, her father died, and she dropped out of school to work full-time to help pay the bills at home. She went to night school instead. It was at night school that she met her first husband, Gary, a landscaper. He would later describe her as being a cold woman, always looking for a fight. The police were called to their residence multiple times for domestic disputes. She gave birth to a son, Charles, on August 19th in 1982. But sadly, he died of SIDS at just 3.5 months old. Shortly after the death of her son, Patty got a divorce and moved to live with an aunt and uncle in New Jersey in 1983. She tried to rebuild her life there. She went through several jobs. At first, she was a Century 21 real estate agent. Then she worked at a car dealership, a waitress, a horse trader. She was a riding instructor, and then she became a rodeo competitor. It was at this time that she met Andy at a restaurant where she worked. They were together for several years. After some financial difficulties where he had borrowed money from her and she actually lost her house over it, they kind of fell out of sorts. Both of them claimed that it was a loss of interest in the relationship and they separated amicably. Later, it was reported by subsequent ex-boyfriends that Patty was obsessed with Andy and that they were often compared to him. When new relationships had difficulties, Patty would take out pictures of Andy and stare at them.
That is not normal or okay.
A little obsessive.
I mean, he made you lose your house. I don't understand why you're so obsessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't seen pictures of this guy. Is he worth obsessing over?
I don't know, maybe by 80s standards, but...
Okay.
I don't remember what his picture looks like, to be honest.
He was a boxer. Like, he looked fairly fit.
He was tall.
Tall, blonde hair. Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe by 80s standards.
Well, it doesn't sound like Patty is the most well-adjusted person, so
This is true.
it doesn't matter how great he is.
I just mean I'm wondering if she was pulling out the pictures in front of her new boyfriends to be like, oh, I miss him so much. You should be jealous.
It sounds like it. And I don't know if you picked it up when Melissa was saying it, but the baby that she lost was the same age now as Joann's.
Oh.
I did. That's the next thing I was going to mention.
I didn't pick that up. I'm glad you said something.
Yeah, only a couple weeks difference in ages. So when I first listened to it, thought, I wonder if that was a trigger. That she was upset that Joann had all the things that she felt like she had lost.
Absolutely.
Just so the group is aware, I'm firmly back on Team Andy.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Hold that thought. Gets a little rocky. There are mixed reports about Patty's personality. And I find this is true of almost anybody. Her friends say that she was bubbly and likable. She was an animal lover and a caring person, and that she just kind of stayed in touch with everybody. And so that was their explanation of why she was still reaching out to Andy. They said that she would just call anybody out of the blue. But others would describe her quite differently, as a bully or a petty thief. She actually got 12 months probation for shoplifting at Walmart at one point. And she was also accused of stealing horses with a previous boyfriend. And she had pled guilty to an assault outside of a bar with another woman.
Okay. Yeah, that all tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not good.
No.
That's not looking good for Patty.
No.
It shows a little bit of a temper, I think. Or poor judgment,
Yeah.
anyway. Some described her as a neglectful horse owner. And it's actually one of the alibis that she presents later on, is that she was appearing before a judge on animal neglect charges on December 12th when the supposed call to the Katrinak home took place. She said the call was actually a week earlier and she hadn't called back after that because Joann was so rude. She had worked as a barn manager at Silver Shadow Horse Stable, a mile from where the bodies were found. And in a picture taken 11 days before the disappearance at a rodeo competition, Patty was seen to have dyed blonde hair.
Aha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's really not looking good for Patty now.
No. Police begin to build a case pretty quickly against Patty. They search for evidence. They follow up on alibis, and they patiently wait for DNA testing, which took forever because hair samples at the time just took a long time to process. The Pennsylvania State Police investigators made several attempts to question Patty throughout this period. On April 27, 1995, they show up at the house and they talk to her through her front door. She isn't as forthcoming as before, but admits to phoning Andy from her house on December 7th to tell him about a competition that she had won. Her story differs from Andy's. Patty claims that Joann had used a considerable amount of profanity, but Andy said that Joann had said that Patricia did. They both agree that during this phone call, it was Joann that hung up first. During the trial, evidence is presented from phone records that show a call from Patricia to the Katrinak residence on December 7th, but not on December 12th. That call from North Carolina lasted 20 minutes, which I thought, that's a long time to have an argument with somebody over the phone. Especially when both parties are reporting that it was short because Joann was angry and hung up. The prosecutor would argue later that the shorter call on December 12th did take place, but it was from a payphone in Pennsylvania. A local call wouldn't show up on phone bills at the time. Phone records would also reveal that Patricia didn't make any calls from her house from December 11th to the 16th. This was out of character because according to phone records and reports by family and friends, Patty talked on the phone a lot. The phone record did show other stretches of days where she had made no calls from her home phone, but these were usually times that she was away from the home and that she had arranged for somebody to watch her animals, so people knew that she was gone during those periods. On May 4th, 1995, Patty meets with the Pennsylvania State Police at a lawyer's office, although no lawyer is actually present. It's just her mom and her there with the police. Police execute a search warrant for her home, but they find little to work with. No gun is found, and Patty denies at this time ever owning a gun, which is actually an interesting statement because police have already interviewed her ex-boyfriend who claims that she did own a .22 caliber gun, and it always jammed after one shot.
Oh.
Yeah. And this is without knowing the one cop's theory.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Okay, case shut. I'm sold.
The ex-boyfriend just volunteers this information.
Right.
Other family and friends say that Patty was definitely a gun enthusiast, and she did own a handgun, but they weren't really sure of the exact type. So there's multiple people saying that she owns a handgun, she has one, but at this interview, she actually denied to police that she ever owned one. Another interesting fact about this gun that I found was 1 week prior to the trial, her half-sister comes forward and tells police about Patty's mother asking them to hold on to a small handgun. When she asked them to do this, they actually buried it in their backyard. But her mom later came and dug it up. When questioned about this, Patty's mom claims that she had just forgotten that she was carrying the gun and she was on her way to work to drive a school bus and couldn't take it with her. So she asked her daughter to hold on to it. And she claims that she had been very angry when she returned to collect the gun and found out that her daughter had buried it.
Okay, I guess if that's what you want to say.
This part was so wild to me. Not that you could have a gun on you and forget and, okay, I need someone to hang on to it while I go drive little kids to school. But who in their right mind, if someone asks you, hey, can you hang on to my gun for a few hours, goes and buries it in their backyard?
You know what? Right. You know who does that? A true friend.
If you say, can you get rid of this gun for me? But if I'm just saying to you, hey, can you hang on to this for me? I'll be right back to get it in an hour. Why are you burying that in your backyard?
Exactly. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
If you had just said, oh, hey, I just forgot I had this. Can you hold on to it? I'll come back and get it. Why would someone bury it?
Doesn't make any sense.
No.
The whole story is fishy. Unfortunately, ballistics would never be able to be done on this because the gun was never found.
Buried it real good.
Well, apparently her mom had come back and collected it.
She dug
it up.
Yeah.
And then it permanently disappeared after that.
Which she buried it again really good.
Yeah, probably. Police investigate all the alibis that Patty gives them because there were multiple ones that she gave to prove that she wasn't in Catasauqua at the time of the murder. For one, she told police that she had called her neighbor the morning of December 16th at 5:30 a.m. And her neighbor corroborated this. Prosecutors would later point out that this was consistent with a timeline of calling her neighbor as soon as she got home after committing the double homicide. And I just have to say, what kind of person calls their neighbor at 5:30 a.m.?
A bad neighbor.
Just crazy.
Yeah.
Like out of the blue. No reason. Hey, I saw your light on. I guess you're up now, hey? This is very bizarre. But she did call. She did say that she went to the gas station in her original interview, but she wasn't able to come up with a receipt. And the attendant there couldn't confirm that she had actually been there because there were just too many people that used the gas station. And so much time had passed by the time that police were actually going back and checking on her alibi because they didn't check on it at the very beginning. For the grain that she had said that she had picked up that day, she doesn't have a receipt for that either, even though she actually needed these receipts to show to the animal control to prove that she was feeding her animals because it was a condition of her animal abuse case.
Oh, yeah.
And then there was this whole scenario of a Cowboys bar dance lesson that she attended. She said that she had attended a dance lesson at Cowboys bar on the Thursday evening, but Patty's name was not on the sign-in sheet, even though every other night that she had attended, she had signed in. And the only ones that could say for sure that she was there on December 15th were her new boyfriend at the time and his friend. No other patrons of the bar would say that they saw her. When providing an interview for the author of Convenient Suspect, which is a book that was written on Patty's innocence, Patty relates that she was at the bar on Friday night and was asked by several people why she looked tired. And she told them that she had some bad news about a friend and joked around that people should remember that she was at the bar the previous night because she might need an alibi.
This was super fishy to me.
Yeah. What an odd thing to say.
Absolutely. Patty, you're looking guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And people would remember her saying this about needing an alibi, but they wouldn't remember her being there the night before, or they couldn't remember her being there the night before.
And she hadn't signed in when she always signed in.
Right. I mean, I think what's kind of funny is that her saying, remember that I was there because I might need an alibi, might have actually worked. They may have tricked themselves into going, oh, yeah, she was there because she told me that she was there to remember that she had an alibi. That's kind of funny that it did kind of stick in people's heads.
Yeah.
But it backfired.
But it backfired, right?
Yeah.
Because she didn't.
It was only her new boyfriend and his friend who said, oh, yeah, she was there. But she was most likely trying to gaslight these people into remembering that she was quote unquote there.
Right.
And police actually think that they found evidence of her doing just that because they gained access to a recorded conversation on an answering machine with one of the patrons from the bar. This patron was known to have a previous brain injury and known memory problems. This recording does sound a lot like Patty trying to convince this person to provide an alibi for her on December 15th. Several people who knew Patty would later testify at trial that she was going around town looking for an alibi. She had said that she was at the hair salon on a day that the salon was actually closed, and she had asked a previous penning partner to provide a farrier receipt for her on December 15th to say that she was in North Carolina. There was also the Cowboys dance instructor. His daughter took a message from Patty and claims that Patty had introduced herself as Patty in Pennsylvania. Patty would later explain this away by saying that she didn't say she was in Pennsylvania, but that she was Patty from Pennsylvania to distinguish herself from another Patty, even though she didn't live in Pennsylvania at the time. Is she sounding super guilty to you guys?
Yep.
Yeah. At this point in the case, too, I was like, yeah, you are a dirtbag. But I had to give her kind of the benefit of the doubt because it would be hard to prove an alibi after so much time had gone by. Remember, this wasn't like today when we all have our phones with GPS and security cameras everywhere. It would be like 2 years ago, where were you on Thursday?
True. That's true.
It would be super hard. Even just a couple of months ago, where were you like 8 Tuesdays ago?
And then to come up with evidence for it, like
Right.
to actually prove it, would be difficult.
Right.
Yeah, it would.
On November 8, 1995, Patty was ordered to give a hair sample for DNA testing. She was pregnant at the time in the 3rd trimester with her child, with her new boyfriend that had vouched for her at the dance club. And there was a lot of speculation at the time of the trial that this relationship was a huge farce because of the age difference between the two of them. And it seemed like a ruse to take advantage of this naive younger man to gain an alibi and cleanse her image with a baby. But I think that, again, just kind of speaks to how much negativity there was around her image at the time of the trial. There was a lot of slander going on. But with this DNA test, they are able to use mitochondrial DNA used by the FBI to say that Patty can't be ruled out as a suspect. They do find a small root tag on one of the hairs, and they save it for later testing because at the time, testing required a lot more material, but they did save it. This root tag was not noted in the initial investigation on any of the hair samples. This is one of the main sticking features for the whole case. When testing did advance, the FBI tested hair samples in 1997. Tests showed that Patty was a match to the hairs found in the car and the forest. And although the odds were pretty low considered to today's standards, the police now believe that they have enough to arrest Patty. On June 24th, 1997 at 6 a.m., Patty is arrested in her home in Linwood, North Carolina by Lieutenant Christopher Kolb and Sergeant Suzanne Pearson. During the arrest, Patty is reported by Savannah to have apologized to her 18-month-old daughter saying, quote, "I am sorry for doing this to you. If I knew I was going to get caught, I would have never brought you into this world," and spoke about never seeing her daughter again to this female officer.
I mean, that's
pretty damning, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she was talking pretty freely in front of this female officer because it was the male officer that had come in to arrest her. And she had went to collect a few things from her bedroom. And so the female officer had escorted her in. And I don't think that she was feeling the same amount of authority from this female officer. But this rookie officer did know enough to take out her notepad and start jotting notes of what she was saying.
Wow.
Yeah. On December 6th, 1998, the murder trial for Patty began. The motive that the prosecution presented was that Patty, while on a trip to Pennsylvania, tried to contact Andy and became angry that Joann hung up on her, and her jealousy grew to an amount that she could no longer contain. Joann had Andy, and Patty had just broken up with another abusive partner. Joann also had a new baby, a baby that was the same age as the one that she had lost. Police theorize that she had stalked her for 3 days, then broke into the basement, and upon hearing Joann's plans with her mother, cut the phone line, and then waited to ambush Joann by the car. At the car, she put a gun to Joann's head as she was placing Alex in the car and forced her to drive to the wooded area. After one bullet didn't kill Joann, the gun locked up, so Patty beat her to death. The 5'9" tall Patty was physically stronger and could easily overpower the 5'4" Joann. Then Patty drove, cleaned the vehicle, and parked it back at the bar by backing in. She then raced back to get home before she was noticed missing. Patty refused to take a plea deal, saying, quote, "How could I explain to my daughter years later that I took a plea for something I did not do?" At the trial, she even feels confident enough to take the stand, which I'm sure you both know is super irregular for murder cases.
Yeah, it's irregular and also stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Generally not a good idea.
Yeah.
No. Patty presents as a demure Southern lady who asks the judge if it's okay to repeat a cuss word. But ironically, just prior to this, several other testimonies had been given of her being very unladylike and using like sailor language.
She has animal neglect charges. I'm not super worried about her cursing.
Yeah, but she tried to present this image of she was so proper. Can I use a cuss word, Your Honor?
I can't. Yeah, it's hard for me to cope with
No.
the dirtbags in this world that get into a courtroom and suddenly they're so different. They're so demure.
So demure and so cutesy.
So crazy. On Friday, March 7th, 1998, after an 18-day trial, the jury did find Patricia guilty after only hours of deliberation. She is spared the death penalty, but is sentenced to 2 life terms without parole. Since her arrest, Patty has maintained her innocence and launched several appeals, claiming that her lawyers didn't do a good enough job defending her, that the evidence wasn't handled correctly, the investigative team withheld information, and accused investigators and lawyers of tampering or planting evidence, and demanded a retesting of it all. All the appeals have been denied based on technicalities or false claims, except the retesting of the evidence, which a judge granted her on October 5th, 2007. Patty was given a choice of which evidence she wanted retested and where she would like to have it retested. The DNA was retested on June 25th, 2009 at Orchid Cellmark Laboratories. It came back as conclusively hers.
The hair.
Whoopsie.
Yikes.
That backfired.
Yeah.
Massively.
How messed up is that? It had me wondering, why the heck would you ever demand retesting only to prove your own guilt? Patty claims that this evidence must have been tampered with and has been asking for further testing of more of the evidence because she claims that she can prove tampering with an FBI report and secondary testimony about the detective lying on the sand. But ultimately, she's been denied. The FBI document that she has cited is shown to be an internal memo for a case brief update. And it's not an official document, but it's a working one where several things are noted erroneously. It is proved to be actually a part of the document, but it's not an original FBI report. So the detective denies all these claims against him. And all further testing of subsequent material on the case is denied.
I just felt when I first heard this, that's pretty bold claims to accuse the FBI of tampering with her case.
We just talked about this, and I can't remember what case, and I'm sure you'll remember, about how, like, you're accusing the FBI. The FBI doesn't care enough to tamper. Like, they care about your case, but that's a big accusation for, like, small fish to an you know?
It would almost make more sense if she was accusing the local police department of tampering, right? They have some skin in the game. But it was actually the FBI that conducted the reports.
Right.
Right. And I'm definitely not one that would say that I believe the FBI is always 100% on the up and up and they never, do anything questionable in their investigations. Because I think that sometimes, like we said at the beginning of this, they went after the husband initially. I think any law enforcement can sometimes get caught up in
tunnel vision.
The theory. But I don't know why the FBI would have so much interest in this random woman who killed another random woman. That, like if we were talking about like an official,
a public figure or something of international security related, maybe.
Right. Then I could see them maybe having some skin in the game, as you said. But yeah, I don't think Patty is that important to the FBI that they're going to.
I mean, I'm glad that they were very involved because it seems like once they got involved, they did a really good job. But like for her to accuse them of tampering doesn't make any sense. And the other thing that strikes me is I don't know what attorney or public defender she was going through that was, bringing up these FBI documents that were unofficial. I mean, that's work product.
Yeah.
That if that was, if it was something that an attorney had presented, that's not even like eligible to be discussed. So it was not really the smartest decision for them to say, well, this unofficial copy of an unofficial copy is saying that they're tampering with evidence. Because that's not, I don't think I'm explaining it well, but.
No, I get your point. And it seems like all of these are coming out during her appeals when a lot of the time she's representing herself or she has other individuals that believe she's innocent working on her case. It's not necessarily a professional person that knows the ins and outs of the law.
And also, if they did want to pin it on somebody, why not just pin it on Andy, on the husband? It's much harder to prove that Patty did it, being in a different state, than that the husband who lives with her had done it.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Just a wild claim.
It is. Patty is now 60 and serving her life sentences in Pennsylvania and maintains her innocence. There are several websites dedicated to pointing out the holes in what she believes is a purely circumstantial case. So these are some of the things she points out. The car cleanup. Prosecutor Michael McIntyre, who wrote the book Hair Trigger about the case, acknowledged to Keith Morrison on a TV interview that it was a little odd that the police found blood on the hairs in Joann's car, but nowhere else in the vehicle. If Patty had driven back from the murder scene after she had shot Joann and then viciously beat her, he said, quote, luminol would have lit up the interior. Patty also points out the reliability of her van at the time, saying that there's no way that it could have made the trip between the states. There's also the problem about this hair suddenly growing roots again. In the initial reports, in any of the police reports, it says that the hairs didn't have roots. But then, magically, several years later, one of the hairs does contain a root that they can test against DNA. There's contamination of hair evidence from the initial scientist, and she really questions the use of microscopic hair analysis because it has been proven to be largely flawed since that time. So those are all of her big main claims against why she can't be guilty. Her most recent bid for a new trial was denied in June of just this year. In this bid, she claimed that her original defense team was inadequate and that she and her team have found documents that were never turned over to her defense team that indicate that the hair found in the car was a natural hair and not dyed as her hair was at that time. Retesting the hair was denied.
I kind of stand with that. I don't think that even if they retested the hair and it wasn't, I don't think that it would really change where we ended up, which is the point of an appeal. Like, is this going to change the outcome? And I don't necessarily think that it would have.
Right. There was the hair that was found in her hand that was a brunette hair. It was never tested. And she can't get it tested, which is interesting, I found. Why not just test it to put it to bed? But it is interesting. Patty is currently in Lehigh County Jail. In her profile on Write a Prisoner, she pleads for help and promises to answer any questions to anybody that wants to ask. For over 30 years, she has maintained her innocence. We were all thinking Andy might have something to do with it at the very beginning of this case. We weren't so sure that Patty was the dirtbag. I need to give you an update on what happened with Andy. In 1996, yes. Andy did move to Colorado, which was something that he and Joann had talked about doing together when they were married. He did marry a blonde friend that he had known in Catasauqua at the time of the disappearances.
Yeah, that is the part that made me go, oh no.
That is weird. But you know what? I think I'm going to generalize. I think with men, sometimes they latch on to things that are there in the bad times. I'm not necessarily going to say that is like a suspicious thing to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I still lean towards Patty being guilty, I think mainly because of the alibi issues at the club or the bar and her comments in front of the police officer who took note of it.
Yeah.
Those are the two biggest things that sound especially sketchy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. There is, for me, some question about how the evidence was handled, but it is so hard for me to believe that there was some great cover-up.
Right.
Right. I agree.
And that, guys, is the case of the dirtbag, Patty Rorrer, who still claims she is absolutely innocent.
There's no way, but I have to say, what a dirtbag.
You're not on the fence.
No, I'm not on the fence at all. And saying dirtbag is so fun and it's so cool to do it with you guys. And we're so happy that you're here. And thank you so much, Melissa, for doing such a great job telling us everything. Where can our listeners find you if they want more?
Anywhere that they listen to podcasts, just look up Buried Motives. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we also have a website, buriedmotives.com.
Perfect. And everything will be in our description. Elysia, can you tell them a little bit about what we're doing on Buried Motives if they loved this and they want more of it?
If you like this case and this is your first time joining us and you want to hear what we're going to do over on Buried Motives, you can join us for our case, The Lady in the Barrel.
It's one of our listeners' favorites cases. Honestly, it's one of my favorite cases that we've ever covered. And I say that about a lot of Elysia's cases, but this one I'm being real about. I think it's one of my favorite ones. And we're so excited.
We're really excited to have you tell that. And that one's going to air on our podcast on November 7th.
The same day that this is coming out. So if you're finished with this episode on the day that it drops or anytime after, you can head over to Buried Motives and you can hear even more of this foursome laughter.
That's right.
Yes.
And if you made it to the end of the episode, I have 2 emoji options for you if you want to be entered in for Sunday shoutouts. Are you ready, Elysia, for both emojis?
I am.
Okay, number 1, in honor of the Buried Motives girls, leave us a shovel emoji.
Yes. I love it.
We love that.
And and if you are wanting to leave both emojis, leave us a mom and baby emoji for Joann and Alex.
Yeah. And I think that wraps it up. So, thanks for listening.
Till next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for listening, guys. Find us on Instagram and TikTok at Burden of Proof Pod and email us at burdenofproofpod@gmail.com.